Hey, welcome back to Oedipus Rex, or Oedipus King, the King, as the book shows it. Oedipus King, Act III. And now I'm down on past line 1170. And Oedipus is called for the one witness about his birth and how his life was saved. And the shepherd comes in, and this is on line 1185, and it's an old man. And Oedipus says, if someone like myself who never met him may make a guess, I think this is a herdsman with the other, and besides, the men who bring him I recognize as my own servants. You perhaps may better me in knowledge, since you've seen the man before. And the chorus, the community, says back, you can be sure I recognize him, for if Laius had ever an honest shepherd, this was he. Notice the honesty is being harped upon over and over again here. Oedipus says, you, sir, from Corinth, I must ask you, is this the man you spoke of? This is he before your eyes. Old man, look here at me. Tell me what I ask. Were you ever a servant of King Laius? I was. But then he wants to give his resume. No slave he bought but reared in his own house. So, he wasn't a slave. He was just a child who was purchased for child labor. And now he's an old man. What'd you do as work? How'd you live? Most of my life was spent among the flocks. In what part of the country did you live? Cithaeron and the places near it. And somewhere there perhaps you knew this man? Well, what was his occupation? Who? This man here, have you had dealings with him? No, not such that I can quickly call to my mind. That is no wonder, says the messenger. But I'll make him remember what he does not know. For I know that he well knows the country of Cithaeron, how he with 2 flocks, I with 1 kept company for 3 years, each year half a year, from spring till autumn time. And then when winter came, I drove my flocks to our fold home again, and he to Laius' steadings. Well, am I right or not in what I said we did? Okay, you're right. Although it was a long time ago. I love this line. Do you remember giving me a child to bring up as my foster child? What's this? Why do you ask this question? Says the herdsman. Well, look, old man. Here he is. Here is the man who was that child. Death take you. Won't you hold your tongue? No, no, Oedipus says. Do not find fault with him, old man. Your words are more at fault than his. And the herdsman replies, O best of masters, how do I give offense? When you refuse to speak about the child of whom he asks you, well, he speaks out of ignorance without meaning. And then Oedipus shows his character, and he threatens. If you'll not talk to gratify me, you will talk with pain to urge you. If you don't say what I want to know, I will torture you. Here, one of you, twist his hands behind him. This is an old man, right? And the herdsman says, why? God's help me, why? What do you want? You gave a child to him, the child he asked you of. I did. I wish I died the day I did. You will, unless you tell me truly. And I'll die far worse if I should tell you. And Oedipus is getting frustrated because he has a short temper. And he says, this fellow has been on more delays as it would seem. And the herdsman says, no. I've told you that I gave it. Where did you get this child from? Was it your own, or did you get it from another? Not my own at all. I had it from someone else. one of these citizens, and he points out over the audience and over the other actors, or from what house? Oh, master, please, I beg you, master, please don't ask me more. This is the third time that Oedipus has been told, you really, really don't want to know. You're a dead man if I have to ask you again. Well, it was one of the children of Laius, a slave or born in wedlock. So back in Grecian times, there was not a code like we have today, in the sense that for monogamy, that was considered kind of foolish. For the ancient Greeks, they expected a man to have a teenage boy as a lover and raise a family, have a wife. I'm not saying that's right, but this is a very different culture than what you and I are used to. Where, can you imagine if you walked into your family reunion and you looked at one of the children and said, so did you know that so-and-so was your father's son? And he looks at you and said, who are you talking about? You mean one of the bastard children my father left around the world? It was one of the children of Laius, a slave or born out of wedlocks. Oh God, I am on the brink of frightful speech. And Oedipus says, and I of frightful hearing, but I must hear. Even though he wished he was deaf before, functionally deaf for the people who have the knowledge. The child was called his child, but she within, meaning the queen, your wife would tell you how all this was. Did she give it to you? Yes, she did, my lord. So imagine a situation where you've got a prophecy. You've waited 9 months to have a baby. Your husband goes off on a weekend, comes back and says, we can't have that baby because the prophecy says he will kill me and sleep with you. Can you imagine what that would be like? What would that be like? And then the husband waits for the child to be born, and it's male, which is what the prophecy says. And he rips that baby from the mother. And then not only does he poke it through all the tendons in its feet, in its heels, so it can't walk. He ties them up. And then he gives the baby back to the mother and says, this baby will kill me and it will sleep with you. I don't know how a mother would do this, but so she takes it to a servant and says, make sure this one dies. And then Oedipus says, to do what with it? Well, to make away with it. She was so hard, it's its mother. Notice how babies are considered property. It. I, through fear of evil oracles, which they said that he should kill his parents. How was it that you gave it away to this old man over here? And the herdsman says, oh, master, I pitied that baby and thought that I could send it off to another country, and this man from another country. But he saved it for the most terrible troubles. If you are the man you are, and I want you to write this quote down. If you are the man you are bred to misery. And that's about line 1267. Oh! They will all come out clearly. Light of the sun, let me look upon you no more after today. I who first saw the light bread of a match accursed, and accursed in my living with them, I lived with, cursed in my killing. And everybody goes off stage. Oedipus is upset. Why? Because he just got the confirmation about his birthright, about his ancestry. And the chorus says, "O generations of men, how I count you as equal with those who live not at all." Another way of saying that would be to say, all of you, you're just like dead people. What man on earth wins more of happiness than a seeming? What man lives in happiness? And if he thinks he's happy, he's just deceiving himself. It just seems that way. Oedipus, you are my pattern of this. Oedipus, and then this might be sarcastic or full of pity, you and your fate. Luckless Oedipus, whom all of men I envy not at all. And then the chorus is going to go back and review that Oedipus had at one time saved all this kingdom from the ravages of the child-gobbling Sphinx. And if you go down to line 1293, the strophe says, "But now whose tale is more miserable? Who is there lives with a savager fate?" Meaning that Oedipus is the most miserable of men. His fate has been very savage. Whose troubles so reverse his life as his? O Oedipus, the famous prince for whom a great heaven, the same both as father and son, suffice for generation. How, oh how have the furrows plowed by your father endured to bear you, poor wretch. And so this is that metaphor that I mention once in a while, and that is the idea that having intercourse between a male and female is like plowing the earth. And if you think about Freud and you think about phallic symbols, and these phrases are written down in the Old Testament and in Greek theater before Freud ever happened on the scene. Now, personally, I don't think having sex is like plowing a field. But the metaphor is that seeds get planted and something comes out. But he's been plowing the field of his father. Why? Because he's with his mother. And the chorus goes on, "Time, who sees all, has found you out against your will, judges your marriage accursed, begetter and begot at one in it." So your marriage is cursed. Why? Because you were born by that woman and you've had children by her. And now a messenger comes out and announces that Jocasta has killed herself. So the second messenger says in 1325, "The shortest to hear and tell, so let me cut it to the quick. Our glorious queen Jocasta is dead." And the chorus says, "Unhappy woman, how?" And the second messenger says, again, "By her own hand. The worst of what was done you cannot know. You did not see the sight. Yet, in so far as I remember it, you'll hear the end of our unlucky queen. When she came raging into the house, she went straight to her marriage bed, tearing her hair with both her hands, crying upon Laius, long dead." You do remember Laius, that not long past which bred a child for us, to send you to your death and leave a mother making children with her son? Which I think probably needs to be looked at, that line right there, because I think that's the chorus, not the messenger. and infamous double blonde. How after that she died, I do not know, for Oedipus distracted us from seeing. He burst upon us, shouting, and we looked at him, and he paced frantically around, begging us always, "Give me a sword, I say, to find this wife no wife, this mother's womb, this field of double sowing where I sprang and where I sowed my children." So go back and go and look up "sow," and you can understand what he's saying, if you understand the meaning of that. As he raved, some gods showed him the way, none of us there, bellowing terribly and led by some invisible guide. He rushed on the two doors, wrenching the hollow bolts out of their sockets before he charged inside, and there we saw his wife hanging, the twisted rope around her neck. When he saw her, he cried out fearfully, and he cut the dangling noose. Then as she lay, poor woman, or in the south, if Sophocles was from the south, then as she lay, bless her heart, on the ground, what happened after was terrible. He tore the brooches, the gold-chased brooches fastening her robe, away from her, and lifting them up on high, dashed them into his own eyeballs, shrieking out such things as, "They," meaning the eyeballs, "will never see the crime I've committed or done upon me, or had done upon me. Dark eyes now in the days," meaning blind eyes, "now in the days to come look on forbidden faces, do not recognize those whom you long for." With such imprecations, he struck his eyes again and again and again, and the bleeding eyeballs gushed and stained his beard. No sluggish oozling drops, but a black rain and a bloody hail, meaning weather hail, poured down. Now, we're almost at the end of the play, but I want to point out that in Greek theater, all violence happens off stage where the audience can't see it. And then you have people report on it. Now, our culture, I would argue, when it comes to this, has been more influenced by Romans. Because Romans ended up taking over Greece and exporting all of the Greek language, not the Greeks, and all of the Greek art and all of the Greek culture and religion. Romans loved violence as spectacle. And maybe you're thinking, well, what does spectacle mean? Well, see, Romans, as they were conquering their world, what they knew of the world, and they knew they were chosen by the gods to do it, they would make sure as they conquered each town, each city, each nation, each kingdom, to provide the people with bread, meaning food, and circus, meaning something to sit down like in front of what my mom used to call the boob tube, going. And they loved to employ violence that way. That's why we have the record of them feeding Christians to lions. And can you see people clapping when they see someone tore apart by a lion? We're not talking about good people here. Or, and this got passed on, we used to have very public executions, and people would bring their families to the different hangings of the government, and they would have picnics, and they would watch, and they'd bring their children with them. Violence as a spectator sport. And think about this. I love NFL football. I feel guilty about it because I know it's harming everybody who plays. But I love it. But it is so violent. And even as they've changed the rules so that You can't hit each other straight in the head. You can only hit here. No, it's still violent. It's still the stadium, the Colosseum that the Romans would entertain people in. And why would they do that? Feed them and entertain them? Because if they're fed and entertained, they won't rise up and they won't go after you. Now, India, about, I think it was 25 years ago, and India is, I think, the second most populated country in the world, with China being more populated, more than 1 billion people, and India will soon surpass China. But about 25 years ago, the Indian government came up with an idea for birth control, since they didn't have access to birth control and the people didn't. What we will do is give away television sets so that people watch television instead of making children. And, did it work out? You'd have to look that up. But that is the idea of bread, circus, control. Alright, so let's go for the last couple pages. We know that Oedipus has poked his eyes out. He has blood all over them, all over his face and his beard. When I watched this play at about 6 a.m. in the morning during the summer, outside where Greeks used to perform theater, as the sun was coming up, when this scene happened, the actor, who is Oedipus, wearing a mask, brings the same mask out, but has blood running all the way down it and all the way down his costume. And the chorus asks this question in 1377. Is he now on ease from pain? Meaning, does he feel better after poking his eyes out? Or really meaning, is he dead? Has his suffering ceased? And the messenger said, he shouts for someone to unbar the doors and show him to all the men of Thebes, to his whole kingdom, to show him that he is his father's killer. His mother's, no, I cannot say the word, it's unholy, for he'll cast himself out of the land, he will exile himself, and not remain to bring a curse upon this house, his house, the curse he called upon it in his proclamation. But he wants for strength, meaning he lacks strength, and he needs someone to guide him. His sickness is too great to bear. And you will be shown that. The bolts are opening, so the castle door is opening. Soon you will see a sight to waken pity even in the horror of it. Which this goes back to the idea of catharsis. I want you to write that word down and learn what it means. Aristotle observed this in Greek theater and in Greek literature, that theater was so important, just like for the Romans, circus and bread. Theater made people less criminal because people could go to the theater and feel a whole gamut of emotions, from murderous emotions, anger or wrath, jealousy, lust, violence, and kindness or pity, that the audience could experience all of those emotions, and then they wouldn't have to use the negative ones. And so catharsis means a purging, a purgation of emotion. Kind of like that, I don't know, what is it, The Purge Part 15 or something? Kind of like that series. That letting people be violent for one night will make society so much better. Yeah, that's if you're protected. But Aristotle, back more than 2,000 years ago, talked about the ability of art to cause catharsis. And think about this, and purging of emotion. Think about a time when you watched a movie, whether you were in the theater or at home on a screen, and when the movie got finished, even if it ended happily, that you were just exhausted. Why? Because up here in your mind, you're experiencing this whole flood of emotions that Aristotle talked about. And so Oedipus comes onto the stage with the blood dripping down him, and the chorus says, "This is a terrible sight for men to see. I've never found a worse sight." And then we have Oedipus saying in line 1405, "Darkness, horror of darkness enfolding, resistless, unspeakable visitants sped by an ill wind in haste, madness and stabbing pain, and memory of evil deeds I have done." And the chorus says, "In such misfortunes it's no wonder if double weighs the burden of your grief." And Oedipus tells the chorus, "My friend, you're the only one steadfast, the only one that attends on me. You still stay nursing the blind man. Your care is not unnoticed. I know your voice, although this is darkness in my world." Or this darkness is my world. And so we're going to have Oedipus talk about what has happened, and this is in line 1427. "What can I see to love? What greetings can touch my ears with joy?" And he's referring to his offspring, his daughter's sisters, and his son's brothers that he has spawned, that he has created. "Take me away in haste to a place out of the way. Take me away, my friends, the greatly miserable, the most accursed, whom the gods to hate above all men on earth." Right there he's coming out and saying, the gods must hate me. I want you to always remember, in relation to Oedipus, the play from the Old Testament that King James calls the Book of Job. And that play has the number one question, because Job is a good person, just like Oedipus is trying to be. Job is good, and yet he ends up suffering, losing all of his family, being terminally ill. He gets the whole thing. And why? Only because of the gods gambling on his life in the Old Testament. But this book asks this question. And that question is, why is there suffering? Or we can personalize it and say, why do I suffer? Now, in this play of Job, in the book of Job, you'll get to the climax, and there's an interpolated section that is all prose. And that's because they combined two different kingdoms together. And they couldn't tell one kingdom, your version is bad and ours is the best, because they wanted them to unite, the tribes of Israel. And so they kept both. But what they did is they passed down the oral tradition of Job and the oral tradition from the northern kingdom and the oral tradition of Job from the southern kingdom. It's just that one had been turned into a play, the other was prose. But this question right here, why is there suffering? Why do I suffer? And I want you to ask yourself this question, because this is what this play is asking. How free am I? Am I really free to exercise free will? No, I'm not trying to be a downer, because personally, I believe that human beings are as free as they decide to be. A lot of times it's more comforting not to be free, to only participate in one tribe, one culture, one system of belief. It can be very comforting because it feels like home. On the other hand, you might take a risk and decide to birth yourself. If you do decide to birth yourself, it will be painful. There's a reason why children cry when they're born. The same with birthing oneself. You cry. The world is frightening and it's cold. On the other hand, if you continue your journey, you can find where the light is. You can find where it is you're at. You'll find that even though you have a past, that does not have to control you. So many people believe 100%. Many people believe 0%. So the chorus in line 1438 lets the audience and Oedipus know, I cannot say your remedy was good, because you would be better dead than living blind. I don't have dyslexia. I just changed the words around so you can understand it better as you look at that line. And Oedipus says later on in line 1455, I have done things deserving worse punishment than hanging. Would the sight of children that are bred as mine gladden me? He's so ashamed by what he unknowingly did, having children with his own mother, that he is always going to be reminded of it. So if you go over to line 1503, Creon enters, his brother-in-law, the brother of his wife / mother, Jocasta. And Creon says, Oedipus, I have come not so that I can laugh at you or taunt you with the evil of the past, but if you still are without shame before the face of men, reverence at least the flame that gives all life, our Lord the Sun, and do not show unveiled to him pollution such that neither land nor holy rain nor light of day can welcome. So Oedipus, I'm not coming to mock you, but you're making a spectacle of yourself. And if you don't care about the audience, at least hide from the sunshine. Apollo. Okay? At least do that. The Lord of the Sun. So that he can't see how corrupt you really are. And then he tells the servant regarding Oedipus, be quick and take him in. It is most decent that only kin should see and hear the troubles of kin. Which the aphorism that gets used all the time is, don't air your dirty laundry so your neighbors can see it. This is not a new concept. Businesses today will do it all the time. If one of the employees of that business speaks out they get fired. That person gets fired. Churches do it. If someone stands up and says, I have looked into this and what you're teaching isn't true, well, then you're no longer part of us. You're expelled. Oedipus in line 1523 says, let the parricide, the sinner, die. Parricide is not a parasite. Parricide is from Latin and it means let the father killer die. And so as Creon is trying to get him off stage, Creon says to him in line 1549, now even you will trust the gods, because the gods put you in your place, punished your hubris. So, says Oedipus, he's not committing. So I command you and beseech you to her that lies inside that house, meaning his mother/wife, give her burial. She is yours, and rightly you will perform the rites for her. Do not just throw her onto the side of the road or into a beggar's grave. Honor her life. And then Oedipus says in line 1536, leave me live in the mountains so I may die in 1540 by their decree who sought indeed to kill me. Yet I know this much, no sickness, no other thing will kill me. I would not have been saved from death if not from some strange, evil fate. Well, let my fate go where it will. So he is accepting, in a way, the idea that fate has controlled his life, not from a beneficent or benignant way, but totally evil. Can you imagine if there were gods and they created you or a little baby and looked down at that baby and said, you're going to have the worst life ever. Can you imagine that? That is not how kindness works. So then, Oedipus' sons are already grown so they can support themselves, meaning that they're older than the age of 8, because maybe they've been apprenticed now, or certainly older than the age of 12. But he still has these 2 little daughters that he is going to weep over, Antigone and Ismene. And Oedipus says in line 1564, God bless you for it, Creon, because he's asked him, please bring me my children. And may the God guard you better on your road than he did me. On the road, remember what happened on the road? And then Oedipus recites this lament. O children, where are you? Come here, come to my hands. And then he's guilty, feeling guilty. A brother's hands, which turned your father's eyes, those bright eyes you knew once, to what you see. So look how blind I am now. A father seeing nothing, knowing nothing, begetting you from his own source of life, giving birth to you from my own mother. I weep for you. I cannot see your faces. I weep when I think of the bitterness there will be in your lives, how you must live before the world. And he goes on to say, nobody ever, to these little children, will ever want to marry you because of what a bad man I have been. If you go to line 1583, people will say, your father killed his father and sowed the seed where he had sprung himself and begot you out of the womb that held him. And those insults you will hear. Who will marry you? No one. Clearly you're doomed to waste away in barrenness, unmarried. no one will ever have a child with you. That's what barren means. No fruit. No, not like fruit of the loom, but no fruit from the womb. So Oedipus says in line 16, 6, 7, 8, send me out to live, meaning I want exile. And his brother-in-law says, you'll quickly obtain your prayer. You mean you agree? You consent then? What I do not mean, I do not say. Now lead me away from here, Oedipus demands. Let go, children, and come. And Creon says that. And Oedipus says, do not take them from me. He says, do not seek to be master in everything. So here we have someone who is a king, a father, a husband, a warrior, up here as king, he is master in everything, even though we get told that he was sharing power 3 ways. But he could have been master of everything, but what he can't be is master of his fate, according to this play. Do not seek to be master in everything, for the things you master did not follow you throughout your life. And then Creon leads him off stage, and the chorus says, in line 16, 19, the very last line of the play, count no mortal happy till he has passed the final limit of his life, secure from pain. So, is it fair what happens to Oedipus? He has flaws. He gets angry. He judges quickly. He gets pushy and violent. He's got flaws. But is it fair that from before the time he was born, destiny, fate, the gods said, you're going to grow up and kill your dad. And you're going to sleep with your mother. How is there any fairness when a baby is brand new, or even before the baby is born? And that is the question. How free am I? And why do I suffer? Because this play says that being human, by definition, means you're going to suffer. And the question is, what will you do with it? Now Job started to complain and ask for an audience with the God who was punishing him because they were rolling dice. And the God said, you are nothing. How do you even have the audacity to ask the question? Now personally, me, I don't think you're nothing. We have a world that needs your help. And that's why I teach you, because I can't take care of a world with 10 billion people on it. And it's going to be, it's more than that now, it's going to be 12 billion by 2050. And we need food, we need water, we need shelter, we need education, we need ways for people to learn, to grow and fulfill their potential. So think about that. Now, people would always come up to me when my wife was dying of cancer and say, oh, I'm so sorry for all your troubles. And mind you, it took 6 years. Okay? And, and I'd look at them, I said, look, I do not feel like there is a rain cloud above my head. I refuse to believe that. They'd be like, oh. No. It doesn't mean we have to feel picked on by what is happening in our lives, but to choose freedom at the same time as we recognize the pain. Thank you for listening to this. I hope you enjoy the play.